Lumberjack's Fallacy. The Cost of Never Sharpening Your Axe. Written and recorded by Mark Gillman. The Contest. Once upon a time, there was a successful lumber mill run by the world's greatest lumberjack, Paul Bunyan. Paul ran the lumber mill with the support of his two most trusted employees, the Tortoise and the Hare. However, Paul had decided it was time to retire, and with only one mill to pass down, Paul needed to pick his successor. Paul saw his employees like family and couldn't pick between Tortoise and Hare. Each had their strengths and either could run the lumber mill. Paul decided that a contest of skill would be the best way to choose his replacement. Paul declared, "The contest starts Monday morning and ends Friday evening. Each day will begin at 9 o'clock and will end at 5 o'clock. Each day I will tally the number of trees chopped down, and whoever chops down the most by Friday will be the winner." Monday, Day 1. Tortoise laughed. The world used to call Tortoise too slow, but he worked out every day to build strong muscle, repeating his family motto, "Slow and steady wins the race." He laughed again and pointed at Hare. "You are too small and spend too much time in books, rather than swinging your axe. I beat you once, and I will beat you again." "Slow and steady wins the race," Tortoise thought again, as he made his way towards his first tree. Hare said nothing. He was not as strong as Tortoise, and no longer focused only on speed. It was also true that he spent some of his time reading books, and not all of his time swinging his axe. Still, he was a top employee in the mill. Without much concern and a tired yawn, Hare made his way to his first tree. Tortoise swung his axe with strong, practiced swings. His axe was loud and tireless. He chopped down his first tree in 5 minutes. Hare swung his axe with similar practiced rhythm as Tortoise. His sharp axe bit deep into the tree with each swing, and he was able to chop down his first tree in 5 minutes too. Each tree chopped down dulled the axe blade. Each tree took 1 minute longer than the one before. The second tree took 6 minutes, the third tree took 7 minutes, and the fourth tree took 8 minutes. Chop, chop, chop went their axes. Slow and steady wins the race, thought Tortoise. He had finished chopping down his fifth tree when one of the junior lumberjacks walked past. He asked Tortoise why he wouldn't stop and sharpen his axe. Tortoise scoffed. "Stop? I am too busy to stop. It wastes time to sharpen your axe, and I have a contest to win." Tortoise continued to swing his axe faster and harder. Hare spent his morning chopping down trees. The first tree took 5 minutes, the second tree took 6 minutes. After 5 trees, he would spend 10 minutes sharpening his axe. After he sharpened his axe, the next tree took 5 minutes to chop down. The next took 6 minutes. He repeated this pattern until noon, when he took his picnic lunch and placed an order online. The same junior lumberjack who visited Tortoise found Hare at noon, enjoying a picnic lunch in the shade of a tree. The junior lumberjack was puzzled. He asked Hare what he was doing. Didn't he want to win the contest? Hare only replied with a smile. As the junior lumberjack walked away, Hare continued to enjoy his lunch. At 5 o'clock Monday, the tally was Tortoise, 27 trees, and Hare, 23 trees. Tortoise found Hare sitting in the shade reading a book. Tortoise smiled, thinking Hare had never learned his lesson about taking breaks. Tortoise was glad that he powered through the day without stopping. "Look at those numbers, Hare. Slow and steady will always win the race." Hare smiled and continued to read his book. It was Modern Engineering, Tools and Methods. Tuesday, Day 2. Tortoise and Hare started at 9 o'clock, just as they did on Monday. Tortoise knew he was already ahead, so he would continue doing what he knew worked. Slow and steady would win the race. He was the strongest and fastest, and if he did not stop, he would get the job done. So he put his head down and continued to swing. Hare found a nice shady spot and sat down to read his book. At 5 o'clock Tuesday, the tally was Tortoise, 39 trees, and Hare, 23 trees. Tortoise found Hare and shook his head in surprise. He asked Hare why he didn't chop down a single tree. If you want me to win, you can always give up the contest, scolded Tortoise. Tortoise was even more glad that he powered through the day without taking a break. Look at those numbers, Hare. Slow and steady will always win the race. Hare smiled and continued to read his book. Wednesday, Day 3. Tortoise and Hare started at 9 o'clock, just as they did on Monday and Tuesday. Tortoise couldn't believe Hare's lack of work ethic. Tortoise knew he was already far ahead, but he would not take a break like Hare did when he lost their first race. Tortoise would continue doing what he knew worked. Slow and steady would win the race. He was the strongest and fastest, and if he did not stop, he would get the job done. So he put his head down and continued to swing. Tortoise didn't see Hare that morning and imagined he was somewhere wasting his time with a book. Hare spent the second half of Monday and the full day of Tuesday reading his book. Today, the order he placed on Monday arrived. Hare didn't chop down a single tree on Tuesday or Monday afternoon because he was spending his time learning how to use a different tool than the axe he was swinging. Hare spent the entire day practicing what he had learned. It was strange and new at first, but he quickly learned how to use this new tool he had learned about from his book. Off in the distance, he could hear Tortoise's axe, which no longer made the sharp cutting sound, instead making more of a thud. This was quickly drowned out by the revving of Hare's chainsaw, and he continued to practice with his new tool. At 5 o'clock Wednesday, the tally was Tortoise, 49 trees, and Hare, 25 trees. A small group of junior lumberjacks gathered, celebrating Tortoise as the apparent winner of the contest. They cheered for him, complimenting his work ethic and commitment. Tortoise didn't bother talking to Hare. He enjoyed the celebration of the crowd, wiping the sweat from his brow. Tortoise was even more glad that he had powered through the day without taking a break. He no longer thought he was competing with Hare. Slow and steady will always win the race. Thursday, Day 4. Tortoise and Hare started at 9 o'clock, just as they did on Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. Tortoise didn't recognize what Hare was holding, but he wouldn't let Hare distract him from winning the contest. Hare was holding a chainsaw instead of an axe. Each went off to the woods to chop down their trees. At 5 o'clock Thursday, the tally was Tortoise, 57 trees, and Hare, 425 trees. Tortoise and his crowd of junior lumberjacks were shocked and accused Hare of cheating. Using a chainsaw is cheating. I don't know how to use a chainsaw, cried Tortoise. I didn't either, but I spent my time learning how. We had the same amount, but we chose how to invest that time differently, said Hare. Hare continued, I didn't learn slow and steady wins the race. I learned we all have the same time, and how and where we use it matters quite a bit. Friday, Day 5. Tortoise and Hare started at 9 o'clock, just as they did on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. Tortoise didn't know what to do other than to head to the woods and begin to chop down trees. Hare cleaned his chainsaw and headed to the woods shortly after Tortoise. At 5 o'clock Friday, the tally was Tortoise, 64 trees, and Hare, 825 trees. Tortoise's heart sank as his axe dropped to the ground. It had become so dull that it looked closer to a club than a sharp axe. Paul whistled in amazement at the results. "The winner is Hare with 825 trees," Paul declared. He awarded the Hare the lumber mill with a beautiful blue deed. As Paul and the other lumberjack walked away to Paul's retirement party, Hare approached Tortoise. Tortoise looked up to see Hare offering him a pink piece of paper. "But I kept my head down, worked the hardest, and never took a break," cried Tortoise. Hare replied, "I know, and that is part of the problem. In a race against change, those with their heads always down are also putting their heads on the chopping block. We can't keep what we have outgrown, and it saddens me that you can't understand. I'm sorry, Tortoise." Hare hopped away to join the others at Paul's retirement party, leaving Tortoise shell-shocked. Tortoise did not understand. He was strong. He was steady. He had never once stopped and never taken a break. He was so far ahead in the race. He had even won a race against Hare before. How could he have lost it now? Tortoise sat down in a sea of stumps, the most stumped of all. Moral: the chainsaw represents investment in new ideas and technology. Sharpening the axe represents improving existing processes. Both can provide significant improvement in results for what might seem like wasteful distraction. Investing in the people who do the work and how to improve the work being done yields significant results and improved outcomes. This is not one directional. People doing the work also need to be open and adaptive to changes in our customer and the systems we use to remain relevant in the work we do. Today, it might be useful to learn how to sharpen the axe, but it is equally important to know when to stop sharpening and to start looking and asking for better ways to chop instead. Math time. Abandon all hope, ye who enter here. Without sharpening, tree 1 took 5 minutes, tree 2 took 6 minutes, and tree 3 took 7 minutes. If you never stop to sharpen your axe, you produce less results and spend more time to do it. The formula would be time, the trees, n, equals 4 plus n minutes. In other words, the first tree would take 5 minutes and the 40th tree would take 44 minutes to chop down. Minds, like axes, get dull over time and need periodic sharpening. With sharpening, Hare would have won even without the chainsaw because he was sharpening his axe every 5 trees. Tree 1 would take 5 minutes, tree 2 took 6 minutes, and so on. Sharpening his axe took 10 minutes, which was twice as long as the time it took for the first tree. However, it was an investment of time since a sharp axe chopped the next tree down in 5 minutes. The formula would be total n equals n divided by 5 times 45 minutes. In other words, each 5 trees chopped down would take 45 minutes, 35 minutes of chopping, and 10 for sharpening. Even without the chainsaw, Hare would have finished 50 trees each day. Hare would have beaten Tortoise by day 2 if he only used an improved version of process of chopping down trees.